Hello there and welcome to another video of Des Illustrates. Today we are gonna look at these Caran Neocolors. These are the water soluble ones, as you can see right here in the text on the little crayons. I saw Irit and Aliona use these in their videos. They had ordered some and I fell in love with them and some of the colors that they showed. So when I placed the order for some paper, I couldn't help myself and ordered a few of these with them. If you are interested in watching their videos, I will leave a link to their channels below in the description box. If you don't already know them, of course, because they make a lot of really entertaining videos that are really relaxing to watch. So definitely recommend watching those. But for now we are gonna swatch out the colors that I got. The first one is oranges yellow, and what I did with the swatch cards is just put the crayons on the paper and re-wet those. So already doing that here, and it's to show how well the crayons dissolve when you apply them directly on the paper. And what I did later on, and I didn't film this with all of the swatch cards, but I put some extra color on the left side of the swatch cards, where I picked up the color directly with a brush from the crayons and almost used them like a little pen to show the full color strength the colors could have. But I must say that doing this didn't make most of the colors much darker, and I will point out later in the video which colors did get a lot darker with doing this. As you can see, I made the color darker on the left and lighter on the right, as I do or try to do with all my swatch cards, so you can see the full range that the color has to offer. And I must say that right away from the first one I was really impressed with the strength of the colors that came off the crayons. I do own some other ones, like the water soluble crayons from Lyra, but I wasn't very impressed with the color takeoff of those, and I haven't really used them since. But these are really impressive in how much color comes off them, and also you don't really see the crayon texture. It shows a little bit, and some colors dissolve better than others, but most of them dissolve really easily and really well, to the point that you almost can't see that it's crayon or just real watercolor like out of a normal pen or a tube. The color that we are swatching right now is apricot, and together with the previous color, oranges yellow, they make a really fresh and almost a bit pastel-like, but not quite. They are a bit transparent, but not as transparent as normal watercolors. I think that's the biggest difference with these, if you compare them to normal watercolors. But yeah, I really like these colors, and I'm really happy that I picked these two out, because right away I can already see some uses for them, and also that I just really love the tones together. Most of my watercolors go to the darker side. If I also pick out just a few colors of a range, then I tend to go for the more brighter or really deep and rich watercolors. But I find that when I'm painting nature and when I'm painting animals, that I often also like really muted, or in this case really light colors. And I think these are a really nice addition to that. And here we see a little close-up of the cards. I added those into the video after each swatch card, so you can see how they look dry. And I think in the swatch card it's also noticeable that they don't look totally transparent. I, however, think that the bit of a different texture they have when they are dry than the normal watercolors or even watercolor pencils have do give them a really interesting look, and that if you would use them in a mixed media piece, for example, that it will make the piece even more interesting because of the differences in texture that there will be. The color that I am swatching right now, that is raw sienna, and this is another color that I saw in one of the videos that I mentioned earlier. And I love my earth tones, and doing the swatch book that I talked about in one of my earlier videos really pointed that out also to me, because I across the different mediums, and I don't even have all the mediums that are water soluble swatched out yet, but across all those mediums I do have a lot of earth tones, and I still have some on my wish list that I would really like from certain mediums, especially watercolors, because I have mostly watercolor from Van Gogh, and this year I bought some premium marketing watercolors and a couple of pens, Roman small, but I don't have any other brands, so there are many brands to explore, and they also all have really pretty earth tones. So yeah, there's a lot left to add to the collection, I will say. And this brand was no exception. It had some really pretty earth tones, and I already saw some in those videos, like I said. And raw sienna was one of them. The English red that we are seeing right now is another one. And the next one that we will be swatching out is burnt sienna. And I particularly love that one. The burnt sienna almost has a bit of a caput mortuum color to it, and as you might have known, that is my favorite color across different mediums. I do have burnt sienna from the Van Gogh paints, and I also received dots burnt of sienna from Winsor & Newton. But I must say that the color burnt sienna, the one that we are swatching right now from Neocolor, is really different, and that it might be my favorite burnt sienna of them all. So I might have to hunt for a burnt sienna that is similar in tone and in color as this one, but then in a pen. So I also have it in a different texture, because these do give a different texture, like I mentioned. And it also reminds me a bit of the light oxide red from Van Gogh, or the pecan from Prima Marketing. But if I compare it to all the cards I have, then I don't have a color that's really the same. They all are different. So I must say that I am really happy that I added this one to the collection. And also, what you are seeing me do right now is what I said earlier, that I try to darken the color with picking up the color or the pigment with a wet brush from the crayon directly. So really using them like they are a watercolor pen. This is a technique that I also use a lot with my watercolor pencils, and I find that it's easier to get darker tones with this technique instead of putting it directly on the paper. And also, if you want to layer these crayons or the watercolor pencils, then you have to wait till the paper is fully dry before you can add a next layer. directly on the paper, because you will ruin the tooth of the paper if you do it on the wet paper. But yeah, with this technique you can layer when it's still wet. And right now we're seeing the dry swatch, and I am absolutely loving that color. It almost even has a bit of a separation in it, so I'm absolutely in love with it. Another color that I couldn't help adding to the few colors that I got was Payne's Grey. Payne's Grey is a color that I use a lot in my paintings, so when I was picking out a few colors, it was in fact one of the first ones that I put in it, because I use it so much, and I thought another Payne's Grey couldn't hurt. However, this Payne's Grey looks really different again than the ones that I have. This one is more on the dark blue side. I have a Payne's Grey from Van Gogh and from Roman Small. And I also have a dot of Payne's Grey from Sennelier. And all three of them are on the grey-black side with a hint of blue. And in the one of Sennelier it even has a hint of purple. And I find that one more of a neutral tint than a Payne's Grey. Not really loving the Sennelier one as a Payne's Grey, but I will talk about that more in a future video. But the Payne's Grey from Neocolor, on the other hand, is really, you can see it here, it is almost like a really dark blue. And I also wouldn't really call it a Payne's Grey. However, I do love the color really much. And yeah, it's just a really pretty color on its own. I just wouldn't call it a Payne's Grey. The next color that we are swatching out right now is aubergine, or aubergine. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But a really pretty purple, also one that I saw in the video that I was talking about. And this is one of the colors that I actually had a bit of trouble with dissolving the crayons. It's not the hardest color, those two are coming up still, but yeah, I had a bit more trouble with dissolving this one, especially where I wanted it to be lighter. You could still see where the crayon was put down. However, in this color I do really like the texture that it gave. It's almost a bit of a really dark purple that is the texture among the more rich aubergine of the rest of the card. In a minute you will see it in the dry swatch card that we will show. And also this is one of the colors that's got a lot darker when I put some of the pigment on the paper right away with a brush from the crayon. That stayed a lot lighter when you only wetted the crayon on the paper, and I wonder if that maybe is the case because I had a bit more trouble with dissolving it. But on the other hand, I didn't have much trouble with the burnt sienna one, and that one also got a lot darker when I picked the color up with a brush from the crayon. So I would say that that wouldn't be the case because those didn't have any trouble with dissolving. This purple was also one that I didn't have in my collection yet, so a really nice addition. And here you can see what I was talking about. You can see that some of the parts where the crayons didn't dissolve really right, that it looks darker on those spots, but it gives a really interesting texture in my opinion, and I think it will be really nice to use in some paintings. And the next color that we are swatching out right now is purple violet. This one is way more vibrant than the other ones, at least the ones that we swatched out so far. And this one was one that I found it really noticeable that they are more opaque. Even when it was dried, I think it gives a really solid feel when it's dried, and it is a really different texture. It also doesn't dry as vibrant as it was when it was wet. It is more of it gets a more darker tone, and also it goes a bit more to the purple side instead of that it is so vibrant and pink. But I still love the color even when it's dry. It's however a bit different than what's shown right now on the camera. This shot of the dry swatch card is a lot closer to the real color, but it's still a bit more vibrant than the dry color in real life is. But I must say, even though it's less vibrant than on the picture on the camera, it's still really vibrant in real life. The next color that we are swatching out is turquoise green. This color was one of the colors that gave me a lot of trouble dissolving it, and in the final swatch card that we will see after this we swatched it, you can see that it still has the texture of the crayons in it really visible. And also on the camera right now it's a bit on the blue side. It's a really almost cobalt cerulean blue, something like that. But the swatch card is really on the green side, so even though it looks just blue and not turquoise green, it's really more green in real life. As we're looking at it from an angle right now, it does look if it's like it's dissolving really nicely. But yeah, on the swatch card that I have here with me right now, I can really obviously see the texture. So I think it also has to do with how it dries. This one dried up a lot lighter than what you are seeing right now in the card. Here we can see the dry card, and I find it less noticeable on this video footage than it's in real life, that there is a real crayon texture visible, but in real life on the card it's really visible. And also this color that we can swatch right now, Jade green, that color also had the same problem. So both of the blue turquoise colors had the trouble with that the crayon texture was really noticeable. However, the turquoise green is the one that has it the most. I don't really mind it. It gives an interesting texture to the painting, and also if you don't want the texture to be so obvious, you can use the crayon as a pen, like I said before. And doing the swatch card has that extra benefit that I now know that these two colors have a bit more trouble with dissolving. So if I make a painting with them and I don't want that texture to be that obvious, then I will use the crayons as a pen. Again, in the camera footage of the swatch card, it isn't that noticeable that there is that texture of the crayon. You can see it a bit in the bottom right, but in real life it's more noticeable. I think the camera has reduced the noise a bit, but yeah. The next color that we are swatching out right now is gold, and that color I was really interested in, because in the footage of, I believe it was Aliona, her video, we saw that it wasn't really gold like the yellowish gold, but a bit of a greenish gold, like it's oxidized a bit, like it real gold was. And I found that a really interesting color. and also really different than the ones that I already had from Finetech. So I decided to add that color to the collection too. I must say that I'm really loving the color. I think I said that a lot during this video, and that I'm loving a lot of the colors that I picked out. But I think on all of the colors I can say that I'm happy that I picked them, even though some of the colors are a bit different than I expected, and that I will use them in some future paintings. I haven't done that yet. I haven't used them in a full painting yet, but I think they will be really interesting addition to the paintings. You can also see right now that the gold is a really nice shimmer, not that obvious and also not like those real metallic paints, but it has a really nice subtle shimmer. Here we can see all the colors together and some close-up shots. I think the end conclusion of this video can be that on first impression I'm absolutely loving all the colors and also the crayons on themselves. If you apply them on the paper, they are really buttery and really smooth. They do, however, think that they are a lot smoother on some hot press paper. The ones I used was cold press paper. I think if you would use hot press paper, that they would even appear smoother if you wet them. With that, we already arrived at the end of this video. I want to thank you very much for watching, and I also want to thank my Patreons for supporting me over there, and with that, this channel. I hope to see you all next time. Bye!